Today, we're diving into one of the strangest, most expensive, and honestly most fascinating business marriages happening in the American economy right now. We're talking about the absolute fusion of Silicon Valley's cutting-edge AI computing ambitions with one of the oldest, most heavily regulated forms of power generation on the planet, the nuclear power industry. Think about the AI tools you might use every single day. Maybe you're generating a quick text draft with ChatGPT or creating images with Midjourney. Well, behind the magic of those platforms are massive windowless data centers quietly consuming an absolutely staggering, unprecedented amount of electricity. And suddenly, it's the nuclear power plants, this massive aging infrastructure from a bygone era, that are stepping up as the businesses best positioned to feed that incredible hunger. I mean, just think about the sheer contrast here, because the cultures of these two industries literally could not be more different. In one corner, you have the hyper-fast world of artificial intelligence. Data center developers are constantly seeking out cheap rural land, and the incredibly expensive computing hardware inside those buildings, the GPUs and servers doing the actual AI training, often becomes technologically obsolete within just 2 or 3 years. It's an industry defined by constant, rapid reinvestment and exponential leaps. But in the opposite corner, you have nuclear power. These are immense facilities that take decades to plan and build. They require incredibly specific geological sites with massive access to cooling water and unshakable bedrock for seismic stability. They're so heavily engineered and built for such extreme longevity that they routinely outlive the original engineers who designed them.
So it begs the question, right? Why this sudden marriage? Why are some of the most bleeding-edge tech companies in the world acting like 1970s utility companies by striking direct deals with nuclear power plants? And it goes way beyond just signing checks for power. Tech giants are actively funding the resurrection of decommissioned, dead nuclear reactors that had already been completely shut down. Some are even exploring funding brand new ones. It's a wildly unexpected twist for an industry that prides itself on moving fast and breaking things. To understand why this is happening, we really have to look under the hood at the uniquely brutal economics of nuclear power.
Section 1. The staggering construction costs.
The nuclear power business has an upfront barrier to entry that is almost unimaginable in standard corporate finance. Building a brand new nuclear power plant from scratch typically runs somewhere between $6 billion and $30 billion. To really put that into perspective, $30 billion is roughly the gross domestic product of a small country. It's the cost of building an entire high-speed rail network or a massive international bridge project. This staggering price tag depends on the reactor design, the number of units, and critically how badly the project goes over budget, which historically happens on almost every single large bespoke nuclear project built in the United States. A single new nuclear plant can rival or even completely exceed the cost of an entire multi-building AI data center campus.
And why are these costs so astronomical? Well, it comes down to engineering constraints that basically have no parallel in the private sector. The reactor containment structure requires precise tolerances and specialized materials that far exceed standard industrial specs. You can't just buy these parts at a hardware store. Components are manufactured by a tiny handful of globally certified suppliers. Then, you have the core regulatory philosophy of defense in depth. This means every single critical safety and cooling system requires multiple cascading layers of backup. If the main power fails, massive diesel generators must automatically kick in. If the generators somehow fail, backup battery banks take over. If those deplete, gravity-fed water tanks are designed to physically flood the system. Building that level of extreme, absolutely non-negotiable redundancy into concrete and steel is incredibly expensive.
The financial challenge gets even worse when you look at the timeline. It routinely takes 10 to 15 years or longer from initial planning to the moment actual power is generated on the grid. Just think about the sheer agony of a 15-year project. Every single year of delay isn't just a scheduling headache, it's an enormous financial penalty. Construction loans are accruing compounding interest daily. Thousands of specialized laborers need to be paid. Entire political administrations change over, bringing completely new policies. The overall electricity market could look totally different by the time you actually finish. And during this entire brutal decade-plus timeline, the plant is generating absolutely zero revenue. It is pure, unadulterated cost.
Section 2. Navigating the regulatory mountain.
Because if overcoming those massive construction costs wasn't enough, building a nuclear plant means navigating what is arguably the heaviest oversight of any industry in the American economy. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission process is extraordinarily thorough. Long before you can even pour a single drop of concrete, the specific reactor technology must pass a design certification. Then, you need a separate combined construction and operating license tailored to your exact geological site. Each stage can drag on for years and cost hundreds of millions of dollars in engineering studies and legal fees alone. But here's the kicker. the regulation never stops. Once operating, resident federal inspectors are permanently stationed on site. Regulatory compliance isn't just a quarterly audit you prepare for in an office. It means federal agents literally living and breathing the daily operations alongside the staff, representing a massive, continuous operating cost.
Section 3. How nuclear makes money.
So, with all these crushing initial costs and relentless regulations, how do these multi-billion-dollar behemoths actually survive? The secret lies in exactly how they generate power. It perfectly illustrates nuclear's superpower, its capacity factor. Nuclear plants in the U.S. typically run at a capacity factor well above 90%. This means they are running at nearly full maximum output almost all the time, day and night, 365 days a year. Contrast that with the realities of the broader electrical grid. Solar panels inevitably go dark every single night, and wind turbines stop dead on a still day. But a nuclear plant, it just burns hot and steady, providing the absolute, unwavering baseload voltage stability that modern power grids desperately require. Now, traditionally, nuclear plants sold this reliable power into wholesale electricity markets, which can be highly volatile. But recently, we've seen a massive paradigm shift. Plants are increasingly signing long-term power purchase agreements, or PPAs, directly with huge corporate clients. These agreements lock in a fixed, guaranteed price for electricity over 10, 20, or even 30 years. This is the ultimate win-win scenario. Tech companies desperately get the incredibly reliable carbon-free energy they need to run massive AI training models while still meeting their corporate climate pledges. In return, the nuclear plants get absolute financial certainty, completely shielding them from the wild swings of daily energy markets. Beyond these direct electricity sales, the government also steps in with crucial secondary revenue streams. Why? Well, because keeping the grid safe from blackouts is quite literally a matter of national security. Many energy markets offer capacity payments, meaning the plant is paid millions simply for being available and ready to produce power during emergencies. Nuclear also receives massive government support, like federal production tax credits, unique state-level programs designed specifically to prevent premature plant shutdowns, and huge federal loan guarantees. All of this financial support exists because governments recognize nuclear as a uniquely vital strategic climate asset that provides emission-free power at a massive, massive scale.
Section 4. The cost to operate.
The financial dynamics of a nuclear plant shift entirely once the lights actually turn on. The most fascinating aspect here is the fuel. Unlike natural gas plants, where fuel costs dictate the entire business model, the actual enriched uranium fuel for a nuclear reactor is remarkably cheap per unit of energy, completely insulating the plant from global fuel price shocks. However, the other operational costs, they are tremendous. A single plant requires 500 to 1,000 highly specialized, heavily licensed staff. Security isn't just a couple of guards at a gate. It involves literal military-grade physical protection. We're talking armed tactical response teams, vehicle barriers, and heavily fortified perimeters. Finally, owners are legally required to continually siphon profits into a dedicated trust fund to pay for the safe, eventual decommissioning and teardown of the plant decades in the future.
Operations also mandate intense, highly choreographed periods called refueling outages, which occur every 18 to 24 months. For a few weeks, the reactor shuts down. It generates zero electricity, which means zero revenue. During this incredibly stressful window, over 1,000 temporary specialized contractors descend on the plant to replace spent fuel and complete major maintenance. You can kind of think of it like a massive, high-stakes Formula One pit stop that lasts for an entire month. The pressure on plant managers is immense, because every single hour the plant remains offline translates to tens of thousands of dollars in lost revenue. Section 5. The paradox resolved. Why AI changes everything. And this brings us right back to the crucial difference that resolves our entire paradox today. Building a new nuclear plant is arguably one of the most financially terrifying infrastructure investments in America, burdened by crushing debt and endless delays. But owning an existing, already built, already depreciated nuclear plant, that is essentially a financial cheat code. Once that massive initial multi-billion-dollar capital cost is fully paid off, the plant transforms. It operates reliably for 60 to 80 years, becoming an extraordinarily profitable, low-marginal cost money printer. This is exactly why Silicon Valley is aggressively swooping in to sign long-term deals with existing plants, and why they're literally willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to wake up shutdown reactors rather than start from scratch. Tech companies aren't just relying on old infrastructure, though.
They're actively placing aggressive bets on the future through small modular reactors, or SMRs. If traditional nuclear plants are bespoke, custom-engineered megaprojects, SMRs are like Henry Ford's assembly line finally coming to the nuclear industry. The theory is that by dramatically scaling down the physical size, these reactors can be manufactured as standardized equipment in a factory setting rather than built piece by piece on site. Several tech giants are pouring capital into SMR projects that are still in development, hoping that these smaller, factory-built reactors will eventually become the perfect, easily deployable power sources for individual data center campuses.
Of course, jumping into this arena exposes tech companies to some very real systemic structural risks. Construction budget and schedule overruns remain the defining financial danger for any new build. There's the constant threat of mid-project regulatory changes that can force incredibly costly redesigns. Any safety incident anywhere in the world can instantly sour public perception and invite crushing regulatory scrutiny. Furthermore, long-term nuclear waste management remains a deeply unresolved national policy challenge. Connecting corporate AI ambitions to an energy source that produces multi-generational hazardous waste brings a profound level of societal and political complexity that standard tech companies simply aren't used to managing.
But despite those formidable risks, the reality of the AI boom is crystal clear. It demands continuous, carbon-free power available 24 hours a day, regardless of the weather. And it just so happens that nuclear power is uniquely equipped to offer exactly that. It's a beautiful, profound irony, isn't it? Infrastructure built decades ago, in some cases before today's tech CEOs were even born, is exactly what is required to power the absolute cutting-edge future of artificial intelligence.
Tech companies have successfully breathed unexpected economic life into an old, highly regulated industry by buying up the power of existing, paid-off reactors. But, there are only so many existing reactors out there to claim. As artificial intelligence's hunger for electricity continues to grow exponentially year over year, the true test will be what happens when we run out of old plants to tap. Will we finally learn how to build new nuclear reactors efficiently and on budget? Or will we simply exhaust the power grid of our past? As AI demands more and more from our grid, the answer to that question is absolutely going to shape the future of our economy, our climate, and our technology. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.